Today in Algebra 2, Chapter 4, Section 3, we are going to learn to solve quadratics by factoring. I want you to remember that solutions are x-intercepts, where a graph crosses the x-axis. We're going to go backwards just for a second and have a binomial times a binomial. When you look at this, we normally do the FOIL method or the smiley face or whatever it is that we have worked on before. So let's do that. We're going to take this x, okay, this first term in the first binomial, and it needs to be distributed to each term in the second binomial. So you have x times x gives you x squared. Then you have x times the 3 is plus 3x. So you've taken the first x in the first binomial and distributed it to both terms in the second binomial. Now we're going to take the second term, which is negative 6, and we are going to distribute it through there. So we have negative 6 times x, and that gives you negative 6x. And then negative 6 times positive 3, and that gives you negative 18. Okay, now your two middle terms will usually combine. So we have x squared minus 3x minus 18. Okay, I took you back there for just a second because now we're going to go, when we factor, we're going to start with this trinomial right here and factor and go back to this right here. Now remember, when you have a binomial and a binomial, that's actually an intercept form for your quadratics. Okay, this being intercept form over here, the x minus 6 right here means that you're going to have an x-intercept at 6, a solution there, and the x plus 3 gives you an x-intercept at negative 3, and so you know that those are your intercepts, and your parabola would look like this. Okay, just trying to pull it all together here just for a second. So here we have a trinomial, and we need to factor this trinomial. So the first step is going to be to go ahead and set up our parentheses to factor, because it's going to factor into two binomials. We're going to look at our first term right here, which is x squared. Okay, how do we get x squared? The first term times the first term has to give you the first term. So x times x is giving you your x squared. Now we need the factors of 20. What two numbers can multiply together to give you 20? And then you see this plus right here. That plus means that the factors of 20 have to add to give you your middle term, which is 9. So we're going to write down the factors of 20. You could use 1 times 20. You could use 2 times 10. Or you could use 4 times 5. Now, how do you decide which ones of those you're going to use? Again, we have to look at this sign right here, and it says plus, so the factors have to add to give you this middle term, which is 9. So 1 plus 20 does not do that. That's 21. 2 plus 10 is 12. 4 plus 5 is 9, so that's what we want to use, the 4 and the 5. So we put 4 in one spot and 5 in the other. Okay. Now we have to look, are these going to be plus signs, minus signs? How are we going to put, how do we decide that? So we look at this plus right here, and we know that the only way to get a positive 20 is to have a positive times a positive 4 times positive 5, or we could have a negative times a negative, because negative 4 times negative 5 would also give you a positive 20. So now we're going to look at our middle term to decide. It is negative, so that means that we need a negative 4 and a negative 5, so that will combine to give negative 9. So let's double check this. Okay, here we go. X times x gives you x squared. X times negative 5 gives you the negative 5x. Okay, we've taken that x, we've distributed, now we need to use the negative 4. We're going to distribute the negative 4. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times negative 5 is a positive 20. Okay, so we're good. We have our x squared, we have our positive 20, and negative 5x and negative 4x combine to give you the negative 9x. Let's take a look at a second trinomial, b squared plus 3b minus 40. Again, we're going to set up our parentheses as our factors because we need to get two binomials. We're going to look at our first term, which is b squared, and know that the only way to get b squared is b times b. Now we're going to look at our last term, which is 40. We need the factors of 40. I want you to see a difference right here, though. This says minus 40, so the factors of 40 have to subtract to give you your middle term. In our first trinomial that we factored, the end term right here was positive, so those factors had to add to give you your middle term. Okay, if your end term is positive, your factors have to add to give you your middle. Okay, in our second one right here, it's negative, so those factors have to subtract to give you your middle term. Let's write down our factors of 40. 1 times 40 2 times 20, 4 times 10, 5 times 8. Okay, we need factors that subtract to give us 3. 40 times 1, when you subtract those, that's 39. That's not what we want. 20 minus 2 is 18. That's not what we want. 10 minus 4 is 6. That's not going to work. 8 minus 5 is 3. And that's what we're trying to get, because this number right here is 3. Okay, we needed the factors of 40 that subtracted to give us 3. So we're going to put a 5 in, and we're going to put an 8 in. Now we know to get a negative on the end, the only way to do that is to have a positive times a negative. So one of the 5 and the 8, they have to have opposite signs so that we have a positive times a negative giving us that negative 40. Now to decide which one is positive and which one is negative, we look to our middle term. It's positive. So our bigger number has to be positive. So 8 has to be positive, 5 has to be negative. Now let's take a look at why that is. Let's multiply this binomial times this binomial that we just came up with, and it needs to come up, our product needs to be this trinomial that we started with right here. Okay, so here we go. B times B is B squared. Then you have B times positive 8, which is plus 8B. Then you have negative 5 times B, and that's negative 5B. And then negative 5 times positive 8 is negative 40. Okay, now we're going to combine our two middle terms right here. Okay, that's going to give us our B squared plus 3B minus 40. Okay, so let's review this very quickly. If your end term is positive, your factors have to add to give you your middle term. If your end term is negative, like it is on this second one right here, the factors have to subtract to give you your middle term. All right, now let's go back to our first trinomial here. If your end term is positive, then you either have to have a positive times a positive or the negative times the negative. And you determine that by looking at your middle sign. In this case, it was negative, so we used two negatives. In our second trinomial, we looked at our end term. It was negative, which means the factors had to subtract to give you your middle term, right here. And then to determine which one would be positive and which one would be negative, we looked at our middle term. The middle term was positive, so that means that your larger term your larger number needed to be positive, so we made the 8 positive. We made the 5 negative. Okay, so then that would give you a negative 5 times a positive 8 would take you back to the negative 40. And then this would give you the negative 5b, this would give you the plus 8b, and that would combine to give you the positive 3. I want to show you one more example here. Okay, here we go. We're going to put our factor in parentheses here, and we have the factors of n squared are going to be n and n. That's the only way we can get n squared. Now we look at our n term, which is 9, and those factors of 9 need to add to give you 3. Well, let's think about that for a minute. If you have 1 times 9, that gives you 9, and then 3 times 3 gives you 9. There is nothing here that we can do. 1 plus 9 is 10, and 3 plus 3 gives you 6. So that's not going to work. So some of these are going to be not factorable. Okay, so when that happens, you just write not factorable and call it good, because there's nothing that's going to work here. It's not going to have any solution, no real solution. After you watch this video, I want you to look on page 255 at number 3 through 14, the problems. That's what I want you to do in class today. And remember that the odds are in the back of the book. So I want you to try to do it. Try to do the problem and then check in the back of the book and see if you are doing it correctly. Refer back to this video all that you need to. Work together if you need to. It's just like a puzzle. Try to get it put together. Y'all have a great day.